Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar hosted by New Zealand Shores and Massey University. New Zealand Shores is one of the country's largest immigration consultancies, but we're also education agents for the majority of New Zealand's tertiary education providers. And one of our roles as education agents is to make you discover the wide range of opportunities and courses available in New Zealand. So today I would like to introduce Mike Hakes, who will be discussing what options Massey University has on offer for you and what it is like to study with Massey.
Okay, let's start. I'll share my screen, which is always a good first thing to do to see if the PowerPoint is working. So, my name is Mike Hakes, and I am the Senior Manager for Global Engagement and Partnerships for Massey University and Massey University College. We have a slightly different partnership with Kaplan and Massey University as to some of the other Kaplan ANZ colleges. At Kaplan, we look after pathways and foundation through Massey University College, which is the fully integrated pathways college at Massey University. But we also look after all international recruitment that comes through agent channels. Okay, so any students that are recruited internationally through you guys is something that we look after as part of our partnership with Massey. And my job is to basically support the recruitment team for Kaplan around the world with information about Massey University and about New Zealand. We have some fantastic options, fantastic products for your students here at Massey in New Zealand. The problem is that not everybody is very familiar with what we have, and that's my job today, is to get you guys familiar with some of the fantastic opportunities for your students. So the first question that I often get asked is, where is New Zealand? Which is fair. We are a very small country, right down the bottom of the world. So we're near Australia, but we are not Australia. And we're made up of multiple islands. The two main islands are very handily called the North Island and the South Island. North Island has most of the people, South Island has most of the scenery, and the North Island of New Zealand, Aotearoa, New Zealand. Aotearoa is the Te Reo Maori, our indigenous people. That's their name for New Zealand. The North Island of Aotearoa, New Zealand, is home to the 3 campuses of Massey University. So Massey is the only university in New Zealand with multiple campuses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about New Zealand to start with, and give you a bit of context. I'll talk about some of the programs for undergraduate and postgraduate at Massey, and then I'll talk a little bit about foundation pathways. I think I have a slightly easier job of it than some of my other Kaplan ANZ colleagues, because the way we work is that almost kind of a one-stop shop, everything from foundation to PhD in New Zealand at Massey, we can help you with. I'm not going to cover all of that. I'm just going to pick out some of the best bits I think you will be most interested in, and that your students will be particularly interested in. Okay, so a little bit about New Zealand. We have about 5 million people across about 270,000 square kilometers. So we have a very small population in quite a big amount of space. But we're a very wealthy country, 23rd in the world for GDP per capita. And we're a very safe, comfortable country. We don't really have extreme weather. It doesn't get very hot. It doesn't get very cold. And if you have students who like nature, mountains and beaches and oceans, then we are a fantastic place to live. But one of the issues I have is that everything you see about New Zealand is cows, sheep, scenery, and Lord of the Rings. And I would want to, hopefully by the end of this presentation, get across to you guys that we are a little bit more than just sheep, cows, and nice scenery. But those are kind of important too, and they make for very good photos. So a lot of people aren't familiar with New Zealand, and they're not familiar that we punch above our weight in many, many ways. We're the #1 English-speaking country at preparing students for the future, 8th most prosperous country in the world, 2nd most peaceful country in the world. And with what's going on in the world right now, that's getting more and more important, I think. We're #4 in the world for gender equality, and we were the first country in the world to give women the vote. So we are a really fair, really equal society. And that's something that I personally feel is really important. I'm an immigrant myself, and one of the reasons I've stayed here is that kind of equal society. I think it also is a really good baseline for international students. And what I'll do now is I'll talk through the 3 cities where we have campuses for Massey University. So we'll start off with Auckland, where you just watched the beautiful video. Auckland is the largest city in New Zealand and is home to about 1.5 million people. And that's about slightly under a third of our population. I would say in an international scale, Auckland is the only proper city in New Zealand, and it is one of the most diverse and multicultural cities in the world, which many people don't know. 50% of the population was born overseas, including me. It's regularly ranked #1 most livable city in the world, and it is the commercial and business hub of the country. But most importantly, it is home to our Massey Auckland campus. So we have a campus north of the CBD on the North Shore, which is one of the fastest growing areas of the country. It is home to some of the best beaches in the city, very safe, very quiet, lovely suburbs. I lived there for about 10 years, so I thoroughly recommend living on the North Shore. And our campus there is home to about 7,000 students. Albany, the suburb where the campus is located, is home to many of New Zealand's kind of newest innovative companies and tech companies, and it has fantastic transport links down into the CBD. It's about 15 minutes from the bus terminal straight into the city. But students don't even need to go into the city. We actually are literally, the campus is across the road from one of the largest malls in the country. One of the things students often ask is, do we have Starbucks, and do we have the cinema, and do we have shops? And the answer is yes. And our Auckland campus is literally opposite all those things. So it's a fantastic location. So the campus in Auckland is focused particularly on business. It's the home of the Massey Business School. Construction, which is one of our most popular programs, food technology, and information sciences. Then we move down the country to Palmerston North. Palmerston North is a small town, I would say, of about 90,000 people. Has fantastic access to beaches, mountains, and it's very relaxed, very friendly place. This is also the home of Massey University. This is where we started, and it's a huge part of the city. And because of the university and the history there, the area around Palmerston North is home to a lot of the major research centres in New Zealand, like biotech, bioindustry, and defence. And because of that, Palmerston North has a really educated and diverse population, even though it's quite a small city, really. But the biggest thing in the city is Massey University, and we have a huge campus, nearly 10 square kilometres on the edge of the city, home to about 9,000 students, and the integration between the town and the city is very, very tight, and they basically have grown up together over the past 100 years. And that has a lot of benefits for students. For example, students and staff have free public transport everywhere in Palmerston North. And our campus there is home to our vet school, which is the only vet school in New Zealand and one of the most highly ranked in the world. It's also home to our aviation school, the only university aviation school in New Zealand. And some of the focuses for the campus there are kind of agriculture, food technology, animal science, that kind of thing. And then finally, right down the bottom of the North Island, we have the capital city of Wellington. Wellington has the nickname the cool little capital, and it is the government hub and the cultural hub of New Zealand. And that includes, it's home to the New Zealand film industry. New Zealand film industry is actually quite a big part of our economy, and it's all based around Wellington. Also the fashion scene, art scene, everything about that is based in Wellington. Basically, it is far too cool for me. I'm not cool enough to live in Wellington. It's also the world's windiest capital city. Has a population of about 500,000. And we have a campus there on the edge of the CBD, home to about 4,000 students. And it's where our College of Creative Arts is based, which includes the oldest and most prestigious design school in New Zealand. And because Wellington is home to the New Zealand film industry, it's also going to be home to the New Zealand National Academy for Screen Arts, which is going to be based at Massey University, because that is the focus of this campus. So we focus on commercial music, music production, screen production, not so much the theory behind these things, but the actual practical work of creating design or creating movies. And that's what we do down in Wellington. So I'll run through a little bit about the economic outlook for New Zealand. I think this is really important these days. I think that students are looking at more than just the academic performance of a university. They're thinking longer term. They're thinking about their careers. They're thinking about their lives, their family, where they're going to be living. So I think that kind of side of things is getting more and more important. New Zealand has a very, very high GDP in comparison with the population. And that's because we're one of the most globalized economies in the world. Trade is hugely important for New Zealand, and we have free trade agreements with countries all around the world. We export a lot of our products, and 50% of what we export is agricultural. We make about food for about 5 million. Sorry, we have a population of about 5 million people, and we produce enough food every year for 95 million people. So agriculture and food production is a huge, huge part of what we do. Tourism also is really important in New Zealand, and kind of tech industries and film, really, really important for us. We are consistently ranked as one of the best countries to do business in. However, historically, about a quarter of New Zealand's skilled workforce leaves. We are a small country down the bottom of the world. Many people would like to go and see other parts of the world, spend some time working in Europe or Australia or America. So many of our educated population move overseas. To be honest, most of them come back, but they may spend 5, 10, 15 years, like my mother-in-law, 30 years outside of New Zealand, and then come back. So we have the largest brain drain of any developed nation, and that means we have very, very high employment. Unemployment's only about 3.5% at the moment. What this all means is that we also have one of the highest brain gains in the world. Many careers have huge shortages of employees, and immigration of skilled professionals and of international students is a huge part of our society. And our immigration policy reflects this. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that side of things as well. Because we have these huge shortages in different areas, New Zealand immigration has a list of careers that are in particularly high shortages. And immigrants who have a job in one of those careers are basically fast-tracked for residency. So what I've done is I've gone through that list and I've pulled out all the careers where a qualification from Massey can help you get into one of those careers, make it easier for you to go on maybe in the future and get residency in New Zealand. And that's what I'm going to focus on when I'm talking about it. Massey has hundreds of programs. I'm going to mostly focus on some of these key qualifications that lead into these careers. Okay, so to start off, numbers. I won't talk too much about numbers. I think a lot of universities get very hung up on the rankings and things. So we're ranked 239th in the world, but in a couple of programs, we rank significantly higher than that. We're top 28 in veterinary science, and we have a unique vet program, which I'll talk about. Top 75 in food science and technology, top 100 communication. But to me, the most important number on that slide is that 82%. So 82% of graduates from Massey are in full or part-time employment after graduating. And you'll see that 31% are in further study. If you're better at maths than me, you'll notice that 82% and 31% adds up to be over 100%, and that is because many of our students go on to further study and employment at the same time. And I think in today's competitive world, where international students are making this huge investment in their education, they need to know that this investment is going to pay off in a return for them. And that's what we are at Massey. We're not about the theoretical or academic study of things in theory. We're about real world skills that are applicable to people's careers, and we want our graduates to go on and be successful and use the skills they learn when they study with us. Okay, so I'm going to talk a few times in this presentation about university entrance. So I popped in this slide to basically sum up what that means. So university entrance is the standard requirement for a bachelor's degree at Massey. So some degrees have slightly higher requirements, but in general, a bachelor's degree at Massey for an international student, you're looking at IELTS 6 or the equivalent, so PTE or TOEFL or whatever you like. And then academic requirements obviously vary by country, and I don't know which countries are on the webinar today, so I've just picked a couple, and you can see them there. If you have a country that isn't on there, and there are lots of countries not on that list, have a look on the website and you can find the entry requirements there. And that is the standard entry requirement for a bachelor's degree. So when I say university entrance, that's what I'm talking about. For postgraduate degree, obviously you already need to have an undergraduate degree, and then a slightly higher IELTS requirement of 6.5. And when we have qualifications that have different entry requirements, I'll flag that for you guys as well. And that leads us quite nicely on to the first of the programs I'd like to talk about. So I'm going to talk about a couple of our most famous programs first, and then I'll let Elena introduce this one for me.
There's something amazing about flying. It's always been my dream. That's why I came to New Zealand. Attitudes here are different. Women can do anything. I came here from South Korea when I was 13. My first step to becoming a pilot was learning English. After that, I began studying aviation at Massey University. The course is fun, but it's also very hard. It's taught me a lot. How to manage my time, independence, confidence. We learn in modern aircraft using the latest technology. We also have a simulator, so I can practice what I'm going to do in each flight. We get lots of support. My primary flight instructor is amazing. His professionalism and passion for flying are inspiring. Graduates from my program now have jobs at international airlines around the world. But I've applied for flight instructor training because I want to work here in New Zealand. I'd really like to inspire other female international students and show them that in New Zealand, gender doesn't have to get in the way of achieving your dreams.
So, Bachelor of Aviation. So we offer a few different programs through our aviation school, but the one I'm going to talk to you about is one of our sort of most unique programs, which is Bachelor of Aviation Air Transport Pilot. But before I talk about that, I just want to mention Bachelor of Aviation Management, which is also a really, really popular degree for domestic and international students. So if you have students who are interested in working in the airline industry, that might be a really, really good option for them. Not everybody wants to be a pilot, and the airline industry is still an incredibly diverse and interesting place of work. So we offer a really good bachelor's degree in aviation management. But Bachelor of Aviation Air Transport Pilot is unique. It is the only professional aviation degree in New Zealand, and basically what it does is it combines a degree with a commercial pilot's license with multi-instrument rating. Now, don't worry if that isn't totally clear to you, because I'm going to talk you through it. So how that works in practice is we have a 4-year bachelor's degree and we squeeze it into 3 academic years. And it is very intensive. I won't lie to you, this is a very intensive degree. And all those numbers and all those certifications on there basically means that when a student graduates, they graduate with a bachelor's degree and they graduate with a commercial pilot's license with multi-instrument rating. This means they are allowed to fly people professionally in smaller aircraft. They also meet all the exam credits for the ATPL, which is the Airline Transport Pilot License, which is what you need to fly the big aircraft, like with British Airways or Singapore Airlines. This means that if students want to become airline pilot, all they need to do is build up their flying hours. And this is a really unique qualification. There's nothing else like it in the Southern Hemisphere. It combines the pilot's license and then everything else that you need to learn to be successful in becoming an airline pilot. And that includes things like management, business understanding, teamwork, not just the ability to fly the plane. So how do we do this? So we use scenario-based training, which is we come up with real-world situations, prep the students put them through that real world situation, and then evaluate them afterwards. And as well as all the technical skills like maths and physics, we're focusing on soft skills like conflict resolution or threat management. So it's a really, really modern way of doing things, incredibly effective and totally focused on industry, which means our graduates on this program are exceptionally employable. If, like me, you're not really a plane geek in terms of equipment, all those are 12 little planes, 2 big planes, and 1 plane that does loop-the-loops. They do not let senior managers for global engagement and partnership play with the planes, which is very disappointing every time I visit. But they do let me play with the simulators, and we have incredible state-of-the-art simulators and virtual reality setups that our students can use when they're training to be a pilot. We also have absolutely incredible staff, a great team of dedicated people, all ready to assist our students. Okay, that sounds great. So this degree is one of the more selective ones. The good news is that the requirement for consideration for selection is very low. So in order to be considered for selection, students need to meet university entrance requirement, which I talked to you about a few minutes ago. They need a slightly higher IELTS requirement, which is IELTS 6.5 instead of IELTS 6. They need a medical certificate, and they need to pass selection board. Selection board is when things get a little bit trickier. So 2 stages. First stage, online test. Second stage is about 5 hours of tests, includes an essay, includes things like multiple choice problem solving, interviews. So it is fairly intense. And if students are successful through all that, they get selected for the course. How do students get selected? How should they prepare? So we don't have any specific requirements for subjects for students to study at school. As long as they meet university entrance, they can be considered for selection. But in order to be successful, we recommend physics, maths, especially calculus, and something with formal communication like English or economics. A trial flight is a really good idea, as is getting some experience in the industry, volunteering at the local airfield or joining the air cadets is really good. The soft skills thing is really, really important. Part-time jobs, very helpful. Volunteering is also really, really good. And the other thing is the students have to be very well behaved. If they do anything naughty, particularly criminal or traffic infringements, they might not be able to get on the course. So that's a very brief overview of Bachelor of Aviation Air Transport Pilot. If you have students you think might be interested in that, let me know and I can give you a little bit more detail. Okay, so the other one of our sort of most famous programs is our Bachelor of Veterinary Science. So again, this is a little bit unique. I think New Zealand is unique, and I think Massey is unique, and we have a very different way of approaching things. If you have a student who would like to be a veterinarian and they're looking at the United States, they'll probably find they need to do a bachelor's degree and a doctorate. That's also the same at University of Adelaide in Australia. There's a bachelor's degree for 3 years and a doctorate for 3 years. We don't do that. We have a 5-year bachelor's degree that leads to the same registration as the bachelor's and the doctorate. So it is 1 year shorter. It's also cheaper in terms of fees. But graduates from Massey University can practice as a veterinarian in the USA, Canada, UK, Australia, Asia, and pretty much most of the world. So it is a quicker, cheaper route to exactly the same level of qualification and exactly the same registration to practice around the world, which is why we're ranked top 28 in the world. And how this degree is structured is it's in 2 parts. We have a pre-selection phase for 1 semester, and there's a selection process, and then there's 4.5 years professional phase, after which students graduate. The requirement for the pre-selection phase, again, is very low. The requirement is university entrance and then IELTS 6. And there are unlimited places for the pre-selection phase. So the course is selective, but pre-selection, unlimited places. And basically, students are studying a Bachelor of Science. After 1 semester, they can try for selection. And they can actually try for selection 3 times. So if they're unsuccessful, they go back to doing Bachelor of Science and they try again. And we give them feedback. So we tell them where they need to practice and what they need to work on. And this is the whole thing about New Zealand and about Massey. We want to give people the best chance they have to meet their goals, right? We're not going to guarantee it for them, but we want to give them the opportunity and the chance. And that is something that's very, very unique to New Zealand. So in order to be considered for the professional phase, students go into 2 groups. I won't talk about group 2 because it's quite a small proportion. Basically, students in group 2 have already done some study at university level overseas. But for group 1, this is students coming from school into the pre-selection phase. They go into selection, and the criteria for that is, so they need to complete the pre-selection phase at Massey, finishing those courses. They need a GPA of 5, and they need IELTS 7. Okay, and that's a requirement from the registration board, for the veterinary registration board. They also need 40 hours work experience. Now, they can do this at Massey during the pre-selection phase. I would recommend that they don't. Reason being that they've just moved around the world. They've just started studying at university. Adding 40 hours of work experience on top of that is a lot. I would recommend that they do the 40 hours of work experience in their home country and not try and do everything once they arrive in New Zealand. So all the students who meet those requirements go into the selection. Selection, again, is a 2-stage process: online tests, interviews, and then the final choice is made by ranking students on their GPA, interview performance, and online test performance. Before 2023, we had a success rate of about 50 to 60%. So we used to have about 50 applicants, and we would accept 20 to 30. For 2023, we have doubled the number of spaces available for international students because we have basically rebuilt the vet school. And this year, all the eligible applicants received a place. So the success rate was 100% for selection for Bachelor of Veterinary Science. Okay, next slide. Oh, yeah, so if you don't get selected, you can continue studying at science and you can apply 3 times. If the worst happens and after 3 times you're still not successful, you've already completed nearly 2 years of Bachelor of Science, so you can finish off the Bachelor of Science and graduate with that instead. So the director for international at the vet school says that she never needs to convince anybody to become a vet because everybody has always wanted to be a vet since they were 6 years old. And what she needs to do is convince them to choose Massey. So why Massey? We have 4 clinics, so students get to try everything from treating chickens to treating horses to our unique wildlife in New Zealand. We have our own farms, and we have a brand new vet school, completely rebuilt over the past couple of years. But most importantly, we focus on work integrated learning. Being a veterinarian is a practical job. Just learning everything from books is not sufficient. You need that actual hands-on practical experience. So in years 1 to 4 of study, students do 21 weeks practical work. And then in year 5, students do a 48-week-long clinical placement. So they basically work as a vet for a whole year under supervision, which is the perfect training in order to go on and work as a vet professionally, which is why, although our QS ranking is 28th in the world, our global reputation, employer reputation, is 6th in the world. Our vets are exceptionally employable, which is why they are in demand all over the globe. And if that doesn't convince students, our Vice Chancellor herself is actually a veterinarian and comes from that sort of background. And some of the other universities make fun of us and say we are a vet school with a university. And we're a bit more than that, but there is an element of truth to it. And the vet school is in many ways the heart of the university. Okay, so talked about aviation, talked about veterinary science. You may remember that a bit earlier on I said that New Zealand produces enough food for 95 million people and that food production is a huge part of our economy. And food technology, creating new food products is a massive part of that. And Massey is the best place in New Zealand to study this sort of thing. We offer Bachelor of Food Technology in honours for 4 years, a research master's for 1.5 years, and a taught master's for 1.5 years. And our degrees are the only degrees in Australasia that combine the science behind making new food products, the engineering of how to do it, but also the business of how to promote and how to sell those products. And the chances are quite high that you have eaten food products invented and created by Massey graduates. That is something that we specialize in New Zealand. We're ranked top 75 worldwide. And that means we're very employable anywhere around the world. But more importantly for many students, if they're thinking about staying in New Zealand, if they get a taste of it and they think this is the place for them in the future, food technology is a fantastically important industry when they're looking at maybe applying for permanent residency. And you can see down the bottom there the different careers that our degrees lead into that are all on the New Zealand Immigration Skills Shortage Register. So it's a really, really good option for students who have a bit of a science interest and are thinking about what they can do with that practically. Construction. So construction is one of the most popular programs for international students at Massey. Construction is in huge demand in New Zealand and globally, to be honest. We offer a Bachelor of Construction for 3 years and a Master of Construction for 1 to 1.5 years, depending on the student's background. Our Bachelor of Construction is one of the few construction degrees that doesn't have an engineering entry requirement. Okay, so the entry requirement for Bachelor of Construction is university entrance, which is the same as Bachelor of Business, Bachelor of Science. So it is a fantastic way into the industry without necessarily having to have that much higher engineering entry requirement. Master of Construction is one of the most popular qualifications at Massey. We offer a wide range of majors, including construction project management. I have just finished having a house built in New Zealand, and from my own personal experience, we desperately need some new construction project managers. So if you have students interested, please send them to Massey to study this and come and work in New Zealand. But also, one of the more exciting things we offer is specializations in digital built environment and sustainable built environment. And we are world leading in our projects in augmented reality and digital technology in this space. And that includes things like virtual reality mapping for escape routes for in case of fire or earthquake. Or one of my colleagues at the university is currently researching in improving the LED lights that you use on a day-to-day basis, because if you ever sat in an office and you get a headache because of the lights, that's the kind of thing they're working on, and that apparently is they're the only people working on it in the world, and hopefully it's going to revolutionize lighting in commercial settings for the future. So incredibly popular qualifications, very highly in demand in New Zealand and around the world, very, very employable, great salary opportunities. So it's a really, really good opportunity for students who are looking for something practical and industry focused. Computer science, I mean, you guys are all very educated professionals, and I'm sure I don't need to explain to you about computer science is in very high demand at the moment around the world. And if you have students who are inclined towards technology and are interested in doing some world-leading, cutting-edge work, and also for a decent salary, information technology is the way to go. And we offer a 3-year Bachelor of Information Sciences with 5 different majors. We're the only university to offer that in New Zealand: computer science, data science, information systems, software engineering. The major we're getting a lot of interest with at the moment, and I think is particularly relevant, is data science. And that crossover between data and business is highly employable at the moment. Businesses all around the world, but particularly in New Zealand, have all this data they don't really know what to do with, and they're desperate for graduates and experienced professionals with the kind of background you get from Bachelor of Information Sciences to come and help them do something with that data to become more efficient and better at what they do. And you can see some of the careers that our degrees lead into there. Business. This is a very busy slide. We have the largest business school in New Zealand, one of the most highly regarded business schools in New Zealand, with a huge range of qualifications. Bachelor of Business, 3 years degree with a range of majors you can see there, everything from accountancy to marketing. Master of Management is a very, very popular degree for international students, 1 to 1.5 years, depending on the student's CV and their history. It's a pathway for students who maybe have not done business at undergraduate and would like to move into that space. So maybe they've got a Bachelor of Science and they want to move into the management side of things. Very popular amongst people in international education. A lot of agents And also a lot of my colleagues in international recruitment have a Master of Management from Massey, which I think they're very successful people. So it kind of speaks to the success of graduates from that program. I'll jump down the bottom because everybody knows MBA, Master of Business Administration. And our Master of Business Administration is one of the most highly regarded in the country, if not the region. It is an intense 180-point program. Most one-year programs are 120 points. This is a one-year 180-point program, so it's very intensive, very, very focused on industry and business, and it is designed for people with work experience already. There's also a little bit of extra scholarship funding available for this program. If students have extra work experience or a particularly high GPA, there's extra funding, so that can be a really good option. But what I think is interesting on this slide, and something we're getting a lot of interest with this year, is Master of Business Analytics. It's also a one-year degree. It's a little bit cheaper than MBA. And again, it's about that crossover between data and business. So if students thinking about their careers, that is a fantastic option for them, Master of Business Analytics. I've got a question, so I'm just going to see what it says. Is work experience required for all the master's programs? No, it's not. Master of Business Administration students will need work experience in order to get on the program, but also to be successful. Master of Business Analytics and Master of Management, off the top of my head, say Master of Finance, they don't need any work experience. I think. I would have to double check that for you. And then finally, one final slide about the Massey programs before I talk about some other stuff. I have to mention agriculture, agricultural sciences and science. Maybe not the most glamorous programs in the world, but a very, very sensible choice for the future. Very sensible choice for students who are thinking about New Zealand or maybe even Australia as long-term options. Fruit production is incredibly important for New Zealand. The techniques and technologies developed here are exported around the world, and we're at the cutting edge of this kind of stuff. So maybe not as cool as developing the next Facebook, but for students who are making a sensible choice, I think that these are really, really good options for them in their careers in the future. Okay, so let's talk about a few details because programs are one thing, but the actual day-to-day living in New Zealand is also really important for international students. So in terms of fees, it depends a little bit on the programs, but we're looking at around 37,000 New Zealand dollars a year. Some of our programs are a little bit more than that, some are a little bit less. That's kind of a rough ballpark figure. In terms of living costs, students will need to show they've got about 20,000 New Zealand dollars a year living costs. That's probably about a good amount. I would say that New Zealand is not the cheapest destination in the world, but we're not the most expensive, and we compare really well with like Australia, Canada, UK. We also offer some very reasonably priced and very good accommodation on campus, particularly for our Palmerston North campus. So for students who are thinking about that as an option, that's a Palmerston North is a particularly good location. Coming from the UK myself, living on campus was always more expensive. That's not necessarily the case in New Zealand. And I've got a little bit of an infographic there with how many dollars you're looking at for coffee or for lunch and that kind of thing. So not super cheap, not super expensive. The good news is students studying at Massey have, on a student visa, have work rights. So they can work up to 20 hours a week during term time with no limit in the holidays. And we do have a pretty high minimum wage. So minimum wage in New Zealand is $22.70 an hour. But because of that high employment rate that I mentioned, a lot of businesses will pay significantly more than that for sort of minimum wage jobs. So I know, for example, the supermarket near the Auckland campus is paying about $25 an hour. So for students who are thinking about part-time work, that can be a really good option to kind of minimize some of those costs for studying internationally. But most importantly, and this is something I really wish I could get more students to know, is that New Zealand has a really friendly visa policy for international students. And whereas some other countries around the world are making it more difficult for students to bring their partner and their families with them, New Zealand is very, very straightforward. International students on a student visa are eligible to apply for a work visa for their partner and for student visas for their children. And that's student visas to study in New Zealand schools for free. Okay, so their children can study for free in New Zealand while they are studying. I have to tell you, I am not an immigration advisor. I can only talk about this generally. I can't give any specific information. Also, students who study any of the Massey University undergraduate and postgraduate degrees are eligible for post-study work rights. And this is up to 3 years, depending on the degree. For a bachelor's degree, each year full-time study means 1 year post-study work rights. For a master's degree, 1 year full-time study means 3 years post-study work rights. So let's say we have a student who's interested in Bachelor of Business and they have a partner and they have children. For 3 years study and 3 years post-study work rights, so 6 years in New Zealand, their partner can work and their children can study for free in New Zealand schools. And so you can see it's a brilliant, brilliant option for people who are considering New Zealand longer term. And I wish more people knew about this because New Zealand is friendly towards international students. We need international students. We need them to come and hopefully stay in New Zealand. And we often get forgotten about in this way compared to some of the other English-speaking countries. Why choose Massey? I've got a few reasons here. Entry requirements. So instead of high entry requirements, many of our world-leading programs offer students the opportunity to attempt selection. Other programs that have restrictive requirements, our requirement is standard, it's university entrance. Low cost of living compared to a lot of other destinations. Massey in Palmerston North is particularly cost effective. And this is from my own personal experience as an immigrant to New Zealand. New Zealand is an exceptionally safe, multicultural society, and it is the perfect place for students with families. Coming from the UK myself, my partner has, her background is Indian originally, and one of the reasons we stayed in New Zealand for so many years was that we felt much, much more comfortable here than we ever did in the UK when we didn't have some of the issues that we had living in the UK here in New Zealand. New Zealand is a safe and welcoming place. And partners can apply for work visas during study. Children are eligible for visas and free education during the study and post-study work period. Many of the programs at Massey lead into careers that are in huge demand in New Zealand and overseas. And we often get asked about unpaid internships. Those are an option, but they're slightly more unusual in New Zealand because of the work rights situation. If students do anything in their internship that benefits a company, they have to be paid. So what we tend to offer is work integrated learning. So as part of their degree, students do a project with a business or with an organization, and that often works as a kind of extended job interview. And many of our graduates end up working in the companies where they did their project and their work integrated learning. It also means that we make sure that our programs are always relevant to industry. And then particularly important for students from many parts of the world, New Zealand immigration has a case-by-case approach to visa applications, and that is very different from other countries. For example, Currently, currently Australia has a default refusal for student visas coming from Myanmar. That is not the case for New Zealand, and immigration looks at each application individually and decides individually. They don't apply a blanket refusal to particular areas. Okay. Also, if students have been refused a visa for some countries, doesn't mean they won't be eligible for a New Zealand visa. And I hope what you're getting from this presentation is that what New Zealanders call a fair go, giving people a chance, an opportunity, is a really important part of our society, and that is extended to international students. So often students who are struggling for a visa for another country, if they're genuine students, will be more successful choosing New Zealand. Okay, so I've got the entry requirements up again, for not for all the countries around the world, just for some of the countries, because what happens if you have students who would like to study with us and they don't meet those requirements? Well, that's where Massey University College, our Pathways College, comes in. And it's a fully integrated Pathways College, which is really important. And I'm going to mention that again because fully integrated is key to what makes Massey University College special. So we offer pathways, three sorts of pathways: foundation, general foundation into undergraduate, English, and then we have some special fast track pathways for undergraduate and postgraduate in business. Okay? I'll talk about the general foundation and the business foundation. I won't go into detail about the English pathways. Basically, for students who don't meet the IELTS requirement for their course, we can offer an IELTS-free pathway for 10 weeks study. And as long as students get the required grade in their study for English for academic purposes, they can move on to their foundation or undergraduate or postgraduate program without doing IELTS. And we can do a packaged offer for that. So it gets around some of the issues with private English providers and visas because they get an offer coming from the university. And that's key. That's that tertiary provider thing. Okay, Foundation Certificate International. Students who complete this can move into undergraduate degrees at Massey University. So it says 8 to 12 months. So far, every student has completed this in 8 months. We say 8 to 12 months because it means that if a student does need to repeat a paper, they get the opportunity to do that without having to extend their visa. So they've got a full 12-month period, but in practice, everybody completes it so far in 8 months. 3 intakes a year. Again, I've got a selection of entry requirements there, but basically lower entry requirements than university entrance. And for some countries, students can even skip out a year. They can go from sort of age 16, do foundation with us, transition into Massey University at 17. And that's another thing that's really great about studying in New Zealand at Massey. We don't have any age restrictions, so we will take students who are under 18 on a case-by-case basis. We don't also have any upper age restrictions. I know that some countries will restrict study to students who are maybe over 40 or older. That is not an issue in New Zealand. It's not a problem at all. I actually had a student who was 83 graduate with me a few years ago. So that's not, age is not a problem. The other thing that isn't a problem studying in New Zealand is a study gap. I know that some countries, they don't like it when there's a gap in a student's CV. For New Zealand, as long as you explain what you were doing during that time, that's fine. And they're not going to assess what you're doing. They just want to know. So for example, if you say, I have a study gap because I was having children, or I was caring for family, or I was traveling around the world, that is all fine as long as you explain that. Okay, so that is very different from other countries. The program structure of the foundation certificate is half the papers are core subjects like English or academic skills, and then the other half are based around the undergraduate degree the student would like to go into. So for example, if a student wants to go into Bachelor of Business, they'll study business papers. If they want to go into Bachelor of Science, they study science papers. But they're not locked in. Okay, so if they study business papers for foundation, and at the end they think, oh, you know, that Bachelor of Aviation or Bachelor of Veterinary Science or whatever looks really good, they can go anywhere. Okay, they just need to make sure they pass on all the papers, and the pass rate requirement is 50%. So as long as they pass on all those papers, they can go into any non-selective undergraduate program, guaranteed. And they can also go into the selective programs like aviation and vet science. They just have to do the extra stuff as well, like everybody else. So they meet the academic requirement for all the undergraduate programs at Massey. So it's a fantastic option for students who either maybe don't quite meet the academic requirements for our programs, or who maybe want to jump ahead and move into university education a little bit early, which is also a really popular option these days. We also offer an accelerated foundation certificate for students who just miss the requirements for their undergraduate study. And it's very similar to the foundation certificate, except basically just half. So it's half the time, 4 months, half the fees, and the structure is the same. Completion requirements are the same and exactly the same. If they complete this program, they can move into any undergraduate program and also the selective programs as long as they meet the extra requirements there. Business pathways. So we offer 2 fast-track business pathway. The diploma in business is an undergraduate business pathway. And students who complete this diploma, they move into year 2 of Bachelor of Business. So maybe they want to do business, they don't meet their entry requirements for the bachelor's degree, they can take this diploma with us, they meet the requirements, but they actually skip year 1 and go into year 2. So it's a fantastic option for students who are wanting to get ahead in their study and get into the workforce sooner. 3 intakes a year, 8-month program. Structure is very similar. 50% of the papers are academic skills and research and that sort of thing. The other 50% of the papers are Massey Business School papers. So they're written by Massey Business School, taught by Massey Business School, in Massey Business School classrooms with other Massey Business School students. So basically, business diploma students are business school students. They just get extra help with academic and English skills on the side. And the requirement for progression is, again, all the students need to do is pass and to get 50% on all their papers, and they can move into year 2 of Bachelor of Business. And then the final academic pathway is postgraduate business pathway. So this is a graduate diploma in management, and it leads into a Master of Management or Master of Management in Marketing. 8 months, similar structure, 50% core papers, 50% Massey Business School electives. The progression requirement is a little bit higher because it's a postgraduate program they're going into. So they only need to pass the business school electives, but for their core academic subjects, they need to get a B- average. Because it is postgraduate study, they've got to be a little bit higher. So when a student completes this program, they have 2 options. One is they can finish their study and they get a graduate diploma, which is pretty good. I have a graduate diploma and it's great. Or they can give that graduate diploma back and it cuts half a year's study off the Master of Management. And for most of these students, it'll take Master of Management down from 18 months to about 12 months. So it's a really, really good fast track option for students who are looking to get into a master's degree in business and don't meet the requirements. Okay, so why choose Massey University College? So first of all, flexibility. So the foundation programs lead into any non-selective Massey program, and students can change their minds about where they want to go at any time. Scholarships, fee waivers, we have some of the most competitive scholarships in New Zealand for foundation pathways, and I'll talk about them next. Now, full integration. You may remember I mentioned full integration at the beginning, and this is really, really important for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that students at Massey University College at MUC have access to all the benefits of Massey University. So they can use all the facilities, all the support, everything that the university has, the students can use, which is good. The second more important thing is that for visa purposes, Massey University College is counted as a tertiary institution, not a training institution, and not a secondary institution. This means that students get full work rights on their visa. It also means that when they're studying with Massey University College, they can apply for visas for their family in the same way as undergraduate and postgraduate. It also means that they are regarded by New Zealand immigration more favorably as genuine students because they're coming to a tertiary institution and a university. So if you have students from countries where the visa thing is a little bit more of a problem, MUC is more of a sure thing than some of the other competitor pathway providers because we are part of the university. Fast track options for business for undergraduate and postgraduate. So they get into their study quicker, they get into their career quicker, saves money. If you have students in China or Hong Kong, we can offer online study for foundation certificate or English language. This means that the students can study at home in China for their foundation or for their English, and they can come into the country for their undergraduate or postgraduate degree, so they save money on living costs. Also, any programs that we offer offshore, we do not charge tax on, so it works out about 15% cheaper, which again helps save money. And then finally, progression rates. So our progression rate for foundation, diploma and business and graduate diploma for 2023 is 100%. So every single student for 2023 has been successful in going into their intended program. I can't say it's 100% across everything because for Foundation Accelerated, we had one student who wanted to go into aviation and unfortunately didn't get selected, and she's decided to go somewhere else. But we have an exceptionally high progression rate, which is because of the quality of our teaching. And this means two things. One is that it's a fantastic option for students because it means that we're going to do everything we can to get them into their program. Let's see what we've got for the final slide. Oh yes, scholarships. So for foundation programs, for students who are applying through agents, that's only students who are applying through you guys, not students who apply directly. For 2023, we will offer a 20% reduction in fees for those students. So that's for foundation certificate and foundation accelerated, diploma in business and graduate diploma. And that is very competitive compared to the other providers in New Zealand. And it is a significant reduction for students who are coming through an agent. For scholarships for undergraduate and postgraduate degrees at the university, basically there's two types. There are what we call or what I call traditional scholarships, and that's the ones where the student applies for the program, they go online, look for the scholarships, and they have to apply for each one. They're normally based around academic excellence, and we have loads of those on the website. I encourage students to go and apply for every single one they can. They range from $500 to $90,000, and those are all available. And the other sort of scholarship is something we're offering new for 2024. This should be announced, and I know that in the market we're a little bit delayed because we've been overhauling our scholarship offering for next year, but this should get announced beginning of November. What we're going to offer is we up until this year we offered a international scholarship based on academic excellence. It was quite a significant amount of money. It had a very high academic requirement, and what we found was not many students were being able to meet that academic requirement and get the money. So I have, with my colleagues, we co-wrote a paper to send to the scholarships office, and we have proposed that the university offers simpler scholarships for lower value, but many more of them, and with an automatic process. So if we have a student for a particular program where we want to offer a scholarship, when they get the offer letter, it will have the fees and the scholarship offer. And in order to accept it, all they need to do is accept the offer from the university. That is through the partway through the approvals process. It has gone to the Vice Chancellor for sign off, and we're hoping within the next week or two we should be able to announce those. So watch this space. As soon as I have the details from that, I will send the information out to your Kaplan team in your country, and they will send it on to you guys. Yeah, I'm hoping that there's going to be some particularly attractive scholarships for your students. I realize that we're slightly late in the market, but hopefully the scholarships will make up for it. Okay, that is basically everything from me. It's not everything from Massey because there's far too much to cover in about an hour. I've already gone a little bit over time. Thank you for your time today. You were all, of course, incredibly busy people, and it's very well appreciated that you take the time out of your day to listen to me drone on about Massey University in New Zealand to you guys for an hour. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mike. This was a really, really good introduction of the study options at Massey University and the benefits of studying in New Zealand, and particularly at Massey. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to one of our education consultants at New Zealand Shores. You can email study@newzealandshores.com or study@nzshores.com, and we'll work with you in defining what the best options are for you and your family. Thank you.